Palestinian priest on why I remain a gay Catholic. Uh, Paul is a more than 50-year member of Dignity Philadelphia, so it feels very appropriate that we allow someone who knows him very well, worships with him often weekly, to do the introduction. So to do that, we have Kate Carroll, who is the president of Dignity Philadelphia. Kate, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for introducing Paul to the rest of the community.
Thank you, Marianne. It's wonderful to be here with y'all tonight. I will say, I've gotten to know Father Paul over my last about 6 years of membership at Dignity Philadelphia, though I got to know him a lot better by reading this book and then talking with him a little bit about it. I don't know who here feels the same way, but again, my name is Kate Carroll. I use she and they pronouns. I'm the current board chair of Dignity Philadelphia. And it's my honor to introduce Father Paul Morrissey in his new book, Why I Remain a Gay Catholic, A Spiritual Sexual Journey. Father Paul was the first presider that I encountered at Dignity Philadelphia. When my partner, Kaden, and I first came to Dignity, I had not attended a Catholic church service in probably a decade. I grew up in a Catholic, conservative, rural, Midwestern community, and I didn't really feel welcome in that church space. As a young queer person, I didn't see myself represented in the leadership of the church. I wasn't excited by what was being preached to me from the pulpit. And in fact, there were some things that I really felt like I didn't agree with at all, things that didn't seem very Christ-like to me. But during my first service at Dignity Philadelphia, Father Paul gave a homily on the story of Jesus's baptism. He related Jesus's experience of making himself known as the Son of God in front of the gathered crowds to a queer person's experience of coming out. Jesus had to be his true self fully in order for him to do all of the incredible and world-changing things that he would go on to do. In the same way, queer people cannot hide or compartmentalize ourselves. We must be able to be fully ourselves, and our whole selves must be known and loved by others in order for us to do the wonderful things that God would have us do in the world. I was so struck by Father Paul's homily that night because I had never in all my years of going to church and Catholic school heard my queer experience spoken about in a positive way in a homily by a priest. As Father Paul says in his book, relaying a thought he shared with his therapist, the people are so hungry to hear God's word in a way that relates to their everyday lives. You can see it on their faces when you've touched a place in their hearts. That was and is true for me. The theme of not only coming to accept our sexuality in relation to our Catholic faith, but to rejoice in how God made us and to know that our sexualities are good because they are a part of us, is one of the many wonderful lessons to take from Father Paul's new book. In reading it, I not only learned so much about Father Paul's life and heard his own voice and patterns of speech so clearly in the writing, but I also learned so much about the history of the church and of the LGBTQ people in our community from the time of Dignity's creation to now. And though a lot has changed since Paul first entered the priesthood, since the early to mid 70s when Dignity was created, and even since 2020, the last date entry in this book, there's a lot that we can learn and apply to our everyday lives. We're in a moment now of really intense persecution and threats, not only to the LGBTQ plus community, but especially trans folks and all kinds of marginalized communities, especially on our undocumented neighbors and people of color. Things that I'm carrying from me, things I'm carrying from Paul's book into my life now include the importance of community with deep and meaningful relationships, courage in the face of authority, especially when we know that it is wrong and goes against what Jesus would have us do, and that it's important for us to continue to be unabashedly who we are and to celebrate joyfully along the way. I can't wait to hear what stands out most to everyone on this call. And with that, I'm thrilled to introduce Father Paul Morrissey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my. I just want to say, because it may be lost in the announcement about this chat, the subtitle, A spiritual sexual journey. I say that because somebody told me, they said, you know what? That hyphen is the most important thing in the title of the book. In other words, it's about spirituality and sexuality, right? And we'll get to that a little more as we go on and hear what you have to say about that. But I want to make that out front right away because I think I started the book and ended it with this phrase, a true vocation. My family, as I tell in the beginning, very religious family in Philadelphia, like 9 girls and 5 boys in the family. Oh my gosh. You had to fight for your dinner at night, you know? But we forged a family of love and a few scars on our faces from some of these fights. But we prayed every night around the table, decade of the rosary. And we would pray at the end of it for a number of prayers, including this one, that you all find your true vocation and have the courage to follow it. And as I say in the book, we thought everybody else up and down our working class neighborhood was praying these kind of prayers too. We found out later they may not have been. But what's the point? Our parents didn't mean you got to become a nun or a priest. In fact, none of my 9 sisters became nuns. They said, after we see what happened to you, we weren't going to join the convent. No. But it's been a challenge to integrate these, what I'll call 2 sides of me, what I refer to in the sequences of the book, in and out. I call the inside, the in part of the book, the in journey I had for the first, say, 20 some years, when I was a sense of myself in the church, solidly in the church and in, I guess, society. Then when I started discovering my sexuality, I discovered myself in some ways being considered out, even if I wasn't out of the closet or even whatever, out of the church. But how to wrestle with and integrate and reconcile these 2 very important parts of me. That each sort of wanted all of you. If you be gay, you almost had to be not Catholic or not religious or the other way around. So anyway, that's what the heart of the book is about. And one other key word in the title I'd like to bring out is remain. Why I remain a gay Catholic. It really breaks my heart that so many people, maybe 50%, I've seen things saying 80% of former Catholics, of Catholics who were raised Catholics leaving the church. God, what is this? If McDonald's had people leaving them by those numbers, they would rebrand their hamburgers, wouldn't they? So in other words, something's wrong, and we need a conversation about this. And I would hope in some small way this book would lead to that. And tonight's a great example of it. So I'm so thrilled you're here to begin this.
That's great. Well, Paul, we are absolutely thrilled that this book is out in the world. It is an amazing gift. It is also a gift that you are here with us this evening to discuss this, your book, your life, your thoughts. I want to say at the outset that it's a really brave book that you have written. You know, it's honest. It is very engaging. It's an easy read. You'll laugh out loud. You'll weep at times. It's very engaging, thought-provoking, I think challenging to readers of every identity and perspective. And it will resonate with this community because it is so deeply rooted in Catholic faith, in your priesthood, in your gay identity. And I love that it centers the question that I think most of us get very frequently: why do you stay? Right? So there's a lot to cover here, and we're going to dive in by having you start with reading a passage from your book. In case there's anyone here who has not yet had a chance to read it, you can get a sense for just how engaging the book is. So, Paul, would you mind giving us one of your favorite passages?
Okay. I really had a tussle on which one to pick, but this one I think it's the heart of what many of us have gone through and coming out, but it's also like got some humor and shock in it too. Okay. It's when I'm coming out to my brothers, in 1974 at a Pennsylvania Turnpike rest stop. How fitting, right? Okay, I'll try and read this pretty swiftly, maybe take about 4 or 5 minutes. And then some questions and answers from you, responses to this, or just anything you want to reach out, say. Okay. After coming out at the family meeting to my whole family, the wider family, I phoned some sisters far away who were not there, and I told them. Tommy, Francis, and Joe lived nearby. So we got together Saturday morning at a Howard Johnson's on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And then there's some paragraph for 3 about how we jump in together, and now we're in the diner. After we ordered, I decided to plunge in. I needed to talk to you guys because some things have happened. Tommy, my elder brother, who's like an ex-Marine and sort of the macho guy in the family, Tommy kept it light. Okay, what anti-war protest do you want us to hook up with now? I shook my head. Joe threaded our lives together in our ritual. Hey, do you remember when we had Nixon's face on a dartboard on the 3rd floor? Ha ha ha, laughed Francis. Or the time Joe laid down in front of the draft board? Tommy joined the ritual. Yeah, Mama and Daddy had to go to court to testify he wasn't a derelict. Ha ha. Underneath the table, my legs jiggled like a racehorse at the gate. I practiced my words. I've been going through some difficult times. I need your help. There's no other way to tell you this. It was so important that I didn't sound like a wimp. Joe leaned closer. So what's going on, brother? I sipped coffee again. You know those kids in the schoolyard who you used to make fun of? I fixed my gaze on the placemat. 29 flavors of ice cream. You know, the ones who played with the girls or lisped. Here, like this. Thay, fella. Tommy faked a lisp and flopped his wrist. Ha, ha, ha. I gritted my teeth. Look, you're my brothers. I'm going through some incredibly difficult stuff. My voice trailed off. It could even have me leaving the priesthood. Their faces dropped, and they leaned closer. I could barely spit the words out. I'm gay. Stunned looks, like when Kennedy died. Memories of queer jokes and creeps who may have come onto them. Flashbacks of bathing together when we were boys, how I ran cross country and dated, and the priesthood hovering over all of it. They'd be wondering, how does being gay fit into that? Months of anxiety rushed out of me. I was enormously relieved just to have said it and show them that I hadn't betrayed the brotherhood. I didn't want to be alone in this. I'm still me. I began to tell them how I had broken into the family the week before. In the middle of this, our food arrived. Like starving beasts, the 4 of us dove into the place. Yummy! We chomped away, unsure what to feel or say. It could have been a Sunday meal when we were all at home as boys. But Paul, Joe said, I know some homosexuals, and you're not like them. Concern riveted his face. Somehow you are more than that to me. Like them? He meant something loving, but I burst out anyway. It's not them. It's individual people like me. Francis asked, How long have you known? I never suspected. Like a prisoner in the witness box, I tried to answer all their questions. Tommy, silent so far, kept stabbing his eggs and stuffing hash into his mouth. I remembered an old joke of his. Did you hear the one about the faggot and the cop? What about you, Tommy? I asked in fear. More silence. I held my breath. Tommy was the one we'd all been measuring ourselves against since childhood. Tommy's eyelids were closed, then flipped open. You mean you like to suck? His unfinished sentence hung between us like a gunshot. We all laughed nervously, even me. I checked around the room to see if we could be overheard, then shot back. Tommy, is that what your love life is about? If someone says they are gay, why is it that people immediately have us in bed with someone? I was on a roll now, the adrenaline pumping from some deep well of pain. You know, being gay is about a lot more than sex, just like being straight is. Maybe it was his way of asking if I was sexually active. Tommy, how do you know so much about it? More nervous laughter. More checking around the room. Hey, keep your voice down, Francis whispered. I'm just kidding, said Tommy, as his voice grew softer. He was doing mental gyrations as he swigged some water. So what's it like for you? Asked Joe. What's going on that we can help you with? He was trying to smile. Should I get into it? Oh God, why not? I've had some sexual activity, not much, but with a friend. Swiveled heads checked out each other's reactions, then turned back to me. But that's not the main thing. It's about what I do with these attractions. Do you understand? I heard my voice rising from its whisper. Do I just hide them? Hate them? Find some way to channel this energy for God as I promised? As a priest, I want to be celibate, yet I know these feelings are part of me. I paused, and no matter what the church says, I know they're good. Whatever you decide to do, you've got my support, said Joe. Francis glanced at Tommy before adding, Mine too, but I'm worried what could happen to you in the church. It's so against gay people, even sex, even against sex. Tommy shifted in his seat. I don't get this gay thing. Red splotches appeared on his cheekbones. I could never figure out why two guys would want to get it on with each other. My heart began to sink. If only I could describe it. The whole array of feelings. It's not so different, I wanted to say. I've been reading this book called The Church and the Homosexual, I offered. It shows how all the scriptural statements about homosexuality are not what we think. Back then, they thought everyone was heterosexual. So it was against their nature to be involved homosexually. But it will be against a gay person's nature to be involved heterosexually. I could see the brothers chewing on that. Tommy, Joe interrupted. Wait, let me finish. Tommy's hand flew up. I may not get it, but you're my brother, right? Grinning like some demon, he patted his hip where he usually carried his hunting knife. If any of these assholes in the church make any trouble for you, I'll cut their fucking balls off. A moment of shock before the four of us broke up. Oh, Tommy, you crazy man, you asshole. I love you. For once in my life, I was grateful for Tommy's macho soldier stuff. Come on, let's get out of here, he barked, suddenly standing. Each of them gave me a bear hug as we parted. Tommy. Tommy.
Boy, that's a coming out story, if ever we heard one. I don't know that any of ours would compare with that, but yet it has that same poignancy, that same, the story of trying to discover yourself in a church and a culture that, didn't support sexuality in general, never mind homosexuality, but yet being so rooted in a family and a community that nothing was going to separate all of you. It's just, can you talk a little bit about how some of those forces, your family, the church, the hiddenness of sexuality and the invisibility of queer people at that time, how did all of that shape your identity?
Yeah, like the invisibility, like the word gay wasn't around. In the like later 60s. I forget. Okay, yeah, sure, Stonewall. But anyway, in the seminary, I was in the 60s, we a lot of these feelings floating around and trying to figure them out. And I tell some very poignant stories in there about how some of the guys in the seminary really didn't, spit me out like I thought they would if I came out to them and would put their arm around me instead, like incredible that like I describe in the book as in some ways it felt like the arm of God like embracing me and this part of me. So I tell some poignant stories there. So these communities, whether it's my family or the order and Dignity, ultimately, when I started forming that chapter in Philly in 74, I guess, with Janine and Bob Nugent, Janine Gramick. Think I say this in the book, or told Marianne this, Dignity helped me to accept myself. I was ministering to these people, right? In those days, we had like 70, 80 people setting up chairs in this, the second floor of a Presbyterian church, or first of all, in a storefront, a basement storefront. And like their love for one another, their trueness of who they are taught me how to be so myself. And they're still doing that in Philadelphia, okay? And you are. So the communities I have been part of have been part of that ongoing acceptance and love, and ultimately sense of like God. Here's the phrase I heard in a retreat long ago, and it's still with me, deep, deep memory, and it's in my book. I heard God saying this to me, Paul, I've chosen the weak things of this world, that no flesh may glory in my sight. So if you feel weak sometimes or challenged or unsure or whatever, remember that quote, actually, which is St. Paul's experience, right? Anyway, enough said
Yeah.
for that.
No, no, that was lovely. I remember the very touching moment during the Dignity Philadelphia 50th anniversary when you and I think three other people, one of whom was Janine Gramick, were presented with 50-year pins. Oh, and you have it on tonight. It's remarkable to think about the history that you have lived in
Yeah.
that community, in the church, in the greater LGBTQ community, through all of these. I remember being very struck in your book when you encounter two issues in how the church dealt with gay people and their impact on you. And one is during the AIDS crisis, when priests, including members of your community, were dying of AIDS.
Yeah.
Um, and then when you were present for the expulsion of Dignity New York
Mm,
from St. Francis Xavier Parish.
mm,
Can you talk a little bit about, those two incidents or one of them and how that impacted you as a gay man, as a gay priest, and as a Catholic to your core? How did you deal with your relationship with God, with the church, with the community in light of those really impactful moments?
mm. Uh, well, I mean, just one moment to mention the Quakers. See, when I first started on a leave, no, I wasn't on a leave of absence was starting, and I lived with the Quakers for 3 or 4 years, and I tell that story in the book in the early 70s. And they taught me to be a priest in the streets. In other words, go out where the people are. That's where the action is, and that's where you need to minister. So anyway, that drew me in a whole nother path, and I'm still on that, right? I'm still on that. I'm in the church. I live here in the rectory at St. Augustine's, but my street level ministry is really what gives me life. Marianne is referring in the one thing to the ex, it's expulsion of the after the Halloween letter called in 1986 by Benedict, which forged those horrible words, intrinsically disordered and all this stuff. You know, they kicked Dignity out of all the churches in the country where we had chapters because Dignity under John McNeil said, I can't live with just buying into that incriminating characterization of who we are. So they use that actually as probably a bait for Dignity to say, no, we stand our grounds. We believe you can be Catholic and gay in relationships that are good. And all the chapters were forced out in the country. Now, some changed the name to something else, but it was a major moment in New York because there was a huge chapter in New York. I mean, hundreds of people went on Sunday nights, St. Francis Xavier. So we had a mass of expulsion. And I won't try and go through the whole thing. It's written out in gory detail, if you will, in the book. Beautiful, actually. But it was so incredible experience to be shouting at the top of our lungs in anger in church, in ritual together. We are the church. We are the church. We are the church. And then we filed out of church, left it a black shell with candles into the streets, going down to the gay community center where they have mass from then on in. So anyway, we were claiming we were part of the church. So you can kick us out. You can do anything you want. But anyway, it was an enormous moment of claiming who I am, both as a person, as a priest, and the church, which in this case was in the streets. And so often it still is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not the building. It's not the hierarchy. It's who we are together. I mean, your conviction about that and how that infuses your ministry is just so present in those moments and throughout the book. One of
But
the
we
other
have
things. Oh, go ahead.
I just wondered if some people out there either have read the book or just anything stirred up by their by these comments that they might throw a question or a comment out. And we can get back to it ourselves too, but go
Yeah.
ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Certainly if folks, we have reserved some time. We have a few questions we'd like to go through, and then we will have time for folks to ask questions. You will be able to unmute yourselves at that point, raise your hands and ask questions, or you can start popping questions into the chat if you don't want to forget things for us to come back to. And as folks are kind of processing some of this, one of the other pieces in the book that I think is a piece of our queer Catholic history that we sometimes forget about is a group called Communications Ministries, Inc. And I have to say, this was a group for gay priests and lesbian nuns. And I have to say, I did not know that you were one of the initiators of that that group. And so if you can maybe explain, there may be folks on this session that don't know anything about Communications Ministries and how it got started and what it meant to people. So can you tell us a little bit of that really important piece of our history that's often very hidden?
Okay. One of the Dignity conventions, I believe it was in Chicago. It could have been like, oh, it was in 1977, I believe, or 76, one of those two. Rick Woods, a Dominican priest, and I gave a session for chaplains for dignity. See, they hadn't gathered together yet as gay priests and sisters, but many of us were chaplains. So I don't know whether we actually had the session named for gay priests and sisters. I guess we may actually have had it because we kept the press away from it and everything like that. Anyway, we had a session where we talked about our journey, and it was the first time to me, in that kind of a public setting, priests and nuns were talking about themselves and their sexual journeys and what infused their ministry. And we had like 80 people at that first session. And we had a second one. There were another 60 at that one. And we all signed. I said, would you sign? It was a stunning, exciting, like awesome moment. We knew like something was happening. I said, would you sign your names and addresses and we'll send you the minutes of this. The minutes. Well, me and a lay woman in Philly, Claire Llewellyn, she agreed we would start a newsletter, and we sent out a one-page letter to all these people and saying, could we begin sharing our stories with pseudonyms or whatever would help, in a mild way underneath the surface of the church. We did that for like 10 years or more. We had retreats, we had major journals published on gay people in formation and having AIDS and all kinds of things we did. We had retreats on each coast. But then, just to cut to the chase, we had, men and women on our board, religious, and but because of the sexual abuse crisis, there was a major infiltration of our organization, and we had to shut it down. Otherwise, it would have become, they would have been making us like we're all a bunch of pedophiles or something. So enormous, wicked, darn moment that we had to shut that down. I wasn't even on the board at that point, but in 1993, from 77 to 93, that went on. And we used to get messages from like Vatican City and like convents in Ireland, seminaries in South Africa. They started similar things in Australia and in England. So enough said on that. We had a whole ministry to gay priests and sisters around the world. 500 people were on our mailing list. And it was great. And maybe it had its time, and maybe there's a new way to do it. I'm not going to do it. Marianne will do it.
No, there's some wonderful programs happening, among certainly the women's orders and men's orders. And I feel sorry for a lot of the diocesan priests who don't have, the same kind of community support. But it's just so wonderful that, there were these impulses in the 60s and 70s for communities to form and respond to the need. If the official church was not providing the care that people needed, folks were so empowered and did it and served. I mean, I loved the image you told me about of, the map across the world and pushing the push pins in for wherever you got letters from, and people taking, there was no email, right? There was, there were no social media. Uh, People would sit and write letters back to
And
everybody that
we
corresponded.
we would link them up. Like there's people out in
Yep.
Spearfish, South Dakota. Claire and I would go like, oh my God, people live out there. And we put a little pin there. Okay. But somebody else, like within 100 miles, we would help them say, let's just get together for a beer or something. So anyway, it was a great time.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I see a note from Dick Young, who was on the board
Yeah.
of communications ministries
Yeah.
at one point. So maybe we'll get some more stories when we open the chat. Um,
Yeah.
you know, you mentioned this a little bit as you spoke at the beginning, Paul, but I was also really struck by your model of sort of spiritual formation with the in, out, and with model, which I found a very, very healing and 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 healthy way of thinking about sexual and spiritual formation and just identity in terms of relationship with ourselves, with our God, with our communities, with our church. Can you kind of just lay out? I mean, obviously, people should read the book to get the detailed insights into this, but it's a model I'd never heard of. I don't know if you invented it, but if you could kind of just sketch that out for us a little bit as something for us to think about.
Yeah, I would like to say something to it. You need to read the book to really get into it because the book is divided into in, out, and with, and it's purposely done. I came up with that years ago. I think because I'm Irish and I like three-leaf clovers or something like, the Trinity, in, out, and with. Um, Augustine and other famous converts seem to have always described the conversion as going from out to in. They're wicked, they're sinning, they're doing this. He's eating these, stealing these pears, throwing them away. He's trying to pick up people in the back of church, like some of us have done. And then he gets converted. And then from then on, he's on this in journey from out to in. My experience was different. I feel like, no, I was a little, choir boy and altar boy, and like I was doing occasional things that might be sinful, but I was in, believe me, I was in the church. And then, gradually it did coincide somewhat with my coming to my terms of myself. I realized I was more like I'm on the out. So the church doesn't really accept this part of me. So the in and the out part of me, as I grew, we sort of fought for like preeminence, which is going to win, and it dawned on me after a while through the examples of some people and spiritual direction and prayer that like, no, I'm supposed to integrate these. They've got to speak to each other. That's the spiritual hyphen sexual journey in the book title. And if that's the with, well, I'm still on the with. And many of you are probably there, maybe without using the word. So I really believe that is a model. And the epilogue in the memoir, I believe, describes a feminist model for conversion, which is this reverse of the classical male version. And I won't even try to describe that, but it's really good. Read it. You may identify with it as a gay person, whether you're a woman or a man. I think that one other thing I want to say about that, and I'd love to hear from you guys. I think this book is bigger than about sexuality. See, first of all, I believe it's bigger than about homosexuality. The church needs a discussion about sexuality and how it's been so marginalized and controlled and afraid of. It's not considered a gift in the church, wider than just LGBT people. However, I really think with our country divided into reds and blues and all this stuff, we need a model, and this in out with model is a way of helping people. How can we hear from people who we are in the other camp? We've got to find ways to communicate across the in-out divide. And I think we, in our experience personally, have a way of understanding that and helping the wider society. That's all.
Yeah. No, it really is a lovely model, that I think honors so many journeys. And yeah, you're right. The width, I mean, it certainly has that, Pope Francis echo of accompaniment as, sort of what the church's role is to be. That was sort of the association that came in my mind, like you called the church in the streets, right? It's meeting the people, there were a lot of sort of similar echoes there. Um, Again, if folks would like to kind of join the conversation, we have two ways to do that. You can either put a question into the chat, and is it Caden now who's monitoring that for us? I see Caden. Welcome,
Oh,
Caden. Good to see you. Uh, or if you would like to use down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a react button. And if you click on that, you will see an ability to raise your hand. That will signal to us that you would like to pose a question or make a comment to Paul. We welcome all of that to happen. I don't see anything happening right way. So let me ask you one other question.
Marianne,
Oh.
I see Dick Ulrich is raising his hand.
Okay, great. Dick or Richard, welcome.
Dick, thank you very much.
Dick,
Paul, I met you out in Chicago when you and Marinus brother Bernie Stratman and others were setting up communications ministry.
Okay, wow. Good to meet you.
We're very glad to have the opportunity to support you then. And I read your book from cover to cover, literally. And it is indeed a masterpiece. For me, it was profound. It's very inspiring. And also James Allison's comment about we need to have many other imitators that follow your steps.
Oh,
and I also found that your presentation on in, out, and with very helpful. Your story touched many parts of my life that really helped me to deal with sexuality. And my story was a bit different, but suffered from the same kinds of instances that you relate in the book, and I know I was part of. So
thank you.
I'm extremely grateful to you for doing this book and to make it so personal and revealing. I hope that others do also. So thank you.
Thank you. Are you a Marianist?
No, I am not a Marianist by vow, but I do belong to the Marianists, and I do consider myself a Marianist because I'm involved in their Marianist Social Justice Collaborative, which has a lesbian gay issue group, and we're very active and very much. In fact, we had the Imago Dei conference out in out in Dayton. Well, now 2 summers ago. Extremely helpful, and something that we're trying to itself expand on. So anything that we can do to continue to help, please let us know. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Dick. Thank you so much.
And Michael Rocks.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
there you go. Yes.
So, first of all, talking about communications the way I remember it, is often on a Saturday afternoon at Dignity House, we'd both be in line to use that old mimeograph machine. I'd be doing something for Dignity Philadelphia, and you were doing communications. When you first wrote the book, in Dignity, we had at Philadelphia, we had a little get together, and the question I had then, I want to ask again. When you're with your when your confreres or other priests, does anybody bring up the subject about your book with you?
Fewer than you would think. First of all, we've had many gay friars, okay? And we had an assembly in June where I had a big 8-foot, poster that Paulus developed with the book title on it and everything. My sisters were selling the book in the outside the little dining room where we all ate. 100 guys across the country, and in a sense, very few stopped. Maybe it was too much. Maybe it's like a little daunting at first, to stop and chat or buy a book or be photographed with me. No, I'm really loved wonderfully by my brothers, and they've known I'm gay, although I'm not like in a public out way like this, where all my parishioners would know about me, for the last, 15, 20 years here in the parish. But this is a new dimension. But a few have, of course, read the book and told me very lovely things about it. And given me great, feedback from it, yeah. But in a way, you know what? I think it's too close to home right now. It's too close to home. It's like, oh my gosh, maybe they don't want to know more all this stuff about me, or maybe it makes them wonder about revealing themselves or not, or what people will think. I don't know. So not as many as I would think yet. It's only been out a couple months, so yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Bob?
He has to unmute his.
There we
his
go.
mic.
There we go. Fine. Hi. Thank you, Paul. Guys, nice to hear from you. It's we're the same generation, so I resonate with a lot of what you're saying, and in fact, the things you talked about in my early days, being gay and being Catholic were two separate things. The story I tell about myself is on a Saturday night, I would go out to the bars and the baths and be a gay man. But on the way home Sunday morning, there was a 6 a.m. mass that I would catch, on the way home. I had to go to mass. It was Sunday and get to mass. So, and what you mentioned, John McNeil's book, Dignity, it's the journey has been the integrating of the two. And that integration, of course, is leading to health and well-being, and that's the journey of learning. To me, it's an intellectual how to reconcile, how to understand, not reconcile, but to bring these two things together. That how to be a good Christian gay man, and it's you work this thing through, and at age 80 something. I'm still working it out, but but we live, and so I mean that's my story. I have to ask you. I mean, do you know Brother Bob in Rome?
I don't know him personally. Yeah, I've sent him a book. I've sent him a book through our prior general in Rome. And I inscribed it, and so I'm waiting for him to call me and say, "Let's talk." Over a cappuccino.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And we had Joe Walsh wrote in the comments. Joe, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I went to school. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, hi. You probably know me, Paul, as Bernie.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And hello, Michael. Michael
Yeah.
Rocks, an old friend of mine. Michael and I went to graduate school at the same time, social work. And were involved in Dignity before that. I haven't read your book yet. I bought it to take on vacation. This Friday a week, I'm going away for 2 weeks to Southampton and back on the Queen Mary 2, a fun trip. And I'm grateful to God that I'm still moving around and on my own power
Yeah.
and not in the home. But I just wanted to say what an absolute delight it is to clap eyes on you and to hear you speak about this. And I have had my own journey as well. And given everyone in my family is dead but me, and I don't know why I'm here and they're all gone, but for whatever reasons, God has extended my life. I'm so grateful because the passing of each year,
Yeah.
to have that extra, that time, that ability to be retired with a pension. I'm not working part-time at Walmart or anything, and to really just take more and more and more and more of my time watching the sun move through the sky and to be outside in nature and to listen occasionally when people talk, and to hear, to listen, to be present. And what an absolute gift it's been. And I can hear that you've been extremely busy and effective in your travels and in your journey. And I'm really excited about that. And I remember standing on a street corner in Philadelphia with you. I think it was when the Pope came to Philadelphia. And that was fun. And of course, the police were trying.
Which Pope?
This was
John Paul II, probably.
Probably, back in the early, probably in the 70s. Yeah, it might have been the 80s, but I remember the police came by and pulled down our signs and everything. It was Rizzo's Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yes.
yeah, so it was repression everywhere. But I'm looking forward to reading your book, and I just wanted to have the opportunity.
Oh, Bernie, it's so good to hear you again.
It's delightful, and I heard from Bill Burton recently. If any of you remember him,
Bill
and
Burton.
he's a Franciscan, and he's a seminary professor in I think Maryland. Yeah. Anyway, I've said plenty. Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
And I will mention, I was also a founding member of Dignity Philadelphia, which I am very proud of. So, but in those days, as you pointed out, Paul, it was just a very different time. It was such a very different time. It was filled with energy.
Yeah.
All these young gay people.
One image I want to just pull up for you.
Sure.
The early masses at Dignity were in a storefront basement we rented. And people had to go down a stairway to get in there. And we had this mass there. Michael Rocks will remember playing on a guitar. They're like a German Shepherd dog under the altar because somebody was like blind or something coming there. So it was like unbelievable sense of like being in the catacombs. Exciting. So
it was exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Rachel Esser.
Hi, Rachel.
Thank you. Hello, Father Paul. My name is Rachel. I have a quick comment and then also a question. I just want to say, you mentioned Father Woods, who is a Dominican in Chicago. Assuming there's not more than one, I had him as a professor my first semester of college, and I actually did a presentation on queer theology in his class because he gave it as an option for extra credit, and I didn't need it, but I wanted an excuse to talk to my classmates about queer theology. So he let me talk to my class about it for like 10 minutes just for fun. And he was one of the first allies that I had at school. So that's really cool to know that he was
still there. Is he still there at the school teaching?
He's not. He retired after my freshman year, so in 2022. And I believe he's also passed away since. But he's, from what I gathered, was very, very beloved at the school and very well respected. The entire theology department loved him and were all great allies to me.
Brave man.
He definitely had great influence.
1977. Yeah, thank you very much.
But so it's cool that there's that connection as well. And it was wonderful to learn about so much of that history. And then as far as a question, I was kind of wondering if you could speak to any experience you may have of storytelling being kind of used to further understanding or further change, both in like telling your own stories or sharing those of people you know, of just how that way of communicating to people can have a special kind of impact.
Yeah, I without even thinking about it sometimes, I think that's the heart of it. I mean, that's the gospel is filled with that, right? And then, just my own, this is my third book. My first book was a memoir about actually all my hospice patients when I was in that ministry, telling their stories, just incredible stories of like people. Each of us is an incredible story. We all have a memoir we could write, or 5 of them. Um, and you know what I discovered? It elicits other people realizing their story. If you share a bit of your story, it triggers other people. So like, you're not just preaching at them, you're not just telling them something. So for instance, when I lived with the Quakers, I remember one of the guys there, a Quaker and his wife, he said to me, I was the only Catholic, I think. He said, "I've discovered what you do." I said, what are you talking about? He says, when you're in a group, you'll say something very vulnerable about your life, and then you'll shut up. And he said, other people just get pulled in and they start talking on that level. So I guess I'm still doing it. I really want to share. Thank you for doing that presentation in Rick's class. I would encourage everybody to just keep getting more and more in touch with your story. It's where God is, and other people can join us in that, and break across this divide in our country and even our church, where we think we're the only ones with our story, or those other people over there don't have anything to do with my story. Yes, they do. If we tell our stories and get out of our heads, we'll find all of our common ground, I think. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, are you able to unmute?
I am. So I just wanted to say thank you for this book. It was validating on many, many, many levels. One thing, and the quote that's jumping to mind right now is, I think the letter that you wrote to somebody about being so honest and sharing so much, and how it helped you risk being personal with them. So I guess I'm going to kind of cut to the chase on it. You spoke about Vatican II and how marriage and religious life were co-equal in honor. What might you say to people who find themselves apparently denied both within the church?
Say that last piece. Denying what?
Marriage and religious life, meaning permanent deacon. If people find themselves in that role.
Somebody who's a permanent deacon, so they're denying.
Sorry, I'll clarify. Meaning somebody who is married to a man.
Oh, okay.
Finds themselves being called to serve as a permanent deacon.
Yes.
But according to church rules, that's not allowed.
Yeah. Oh my. Well, it's like women being denied being deacons. At least it's the same ballpark, right? So we know the church has a problem about sex. As I say in one of my riffs in the book, so many things the church comes down. It's though we're obsessed with sex. Not greed, not pride, but sex. Oh my gosh, what is this? So what do I say to somebody like that? I would just be so open to talking to them, encouraging him. He doesn't want to lie that he's not married, right?
He is.
No, he doesn't want to lie so he can be accepted as a deacon.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's precluded by that very thing, Yeah, I don't, I'd start with just encouraging him around. He probably already feels very good about it. Encouraging him about his relationship. I have a whole chapter on same-sex relationships where I just try and take that issue on, because it's the church, one of the church's albatrosses. It can't accept the love you're talking about. So even though, did anybody ever read what's the famous book here by on same-sex relationships throughout the early years? Oh my gosh, there's so many stories of rituals celebrating friendships and relationships that aren't even spelled out between two men, in particular, two women. So, I mean, there's just so much history that we don't even know about our church. I want to say this. I'm getting off the topic. Forgive me. I think to be Catholic is to be gay. What I mean by that is, look at our church. Oh my gosh. I mean, maybe the Episcopalians try and do it as well as us, and usually they can do it better. But we look at our liturgies. Look at the satin and lace and rituals and smells and bells and sacraments. Oh my gosh. No wonder so many of us are gay. We grew up in this world that's like is so colorful and flamboyant and filled with saints and symbols and sensuality. I mean, are they kidding? You can't be gay if you're in the church. The whole church in that regard is gay. You have to prove, people should have to prove they're straight. So I just want to encourage whoever you're talking about. It could be you. I don't know. But I don't know what else to say. But you know, obviously the church won't accept a man to be a deacon who's married to another man right now. Right? And that's a shame. It's sad. Because there's many men, as well as women, who'd be great deacons if the church wakes up. Church wakes up. By the way, you know, in St. Augustine's Cathedral in what's the country? Algeria, I think it is. There's a in the floor, you know, what are those? Terrazzo. It says Presbyterissa. Presbyterissa in the floor of Augustine's Cathedral in Algeria. So our history is forgotten. Enough said. Maybe you want to say something more, Jonathan. Go ahead.
No, I think that was very, very nicely said, very well put. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. Paul, I want to note that in addition to everything else we do, one of the things that Dignity USA does and all of our communities is to work for sacramental equality for all people in the church, regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, marital relationship status, or anything. You know, the grace of these sacraments should be unlimited, right? To the call of God goes to where it will. I don't see any other questions or hands coming up, but Paul, when we spoke in preparation for this, there was a really powerful image that you shared that is meaningful to you in the context of how you've lived your life in community. And, you know, since the community is beyond time and life and space and all of that. And, you know, every Dignity community is unique and each has its features. But one of the things that really sets Dignity Philadelphia apart is the fact that whenever your community gathers, it does so in the presence of many, 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 many banners with the names of members of the community who have passed away. And can you just talk a little bit about what it is like to gather in the presence of all of those souls and to preside and to minister, you know, to the living and the dead, as you spoke of?
Yeah. What Marianne is referring to is there's a huge tapestry banner behind the altar where we set up for Mass. And it's got the names of all those through our history in Dignity Philly who have died and gone to God. I mean, men and women, priests and lay people. And I know so many of them. So you celebrate Mass with this, what I call is this cloud of witnesses behind you. We're looking at our history, 50 years or more, and all these people's lives. And it reminds me of I think it's some tribe in New Zealand, you know, one of the native tribes. They say it's probably more likely all native peoples. When we gather for a ceremony, we call our ancestors in around us. We call them all in. They're all here anyway, but we invite them, we recognize them. And that's what Philly Dignity seems to do with this tapestry banner of all these people, these loved ones who've died. Some of our own priests, some of our priests are on that banner.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
may I say this too? I don't want to, are there people wanting to say something? Excuse me, just one more thing. I want to get this point across. I may have said it already, but I think it can sometimes be missed reading the book. To me, it's as much a story of my evolving sexuality and my understanding of it as my evolving understanding of God and who God is in my life. They're woven together to me. So I often end a chapter with like, I'm talking to God out loud, like, so Lord, where are you in this? Could be some pain or joy or sexual desire or whatever, and my hope is that people who are reading it, maybe reading it the second time, looking for their own and getting in touch with their own evolving relationship with God, whatever sexual orientation they are. See, to me, if I may be so bold as to place my writing in his realm, not because he wanted to just tell his story, but he wanted other people to get in touch with their story, to get it back to Rachel's question, and their understanding of God. If we don't do that and we don't help people do that, all the preaching, all the church teaching we give them over all these years, what does it mean if they're not really in touch with their personal relationship with God right now? And I want to hear more of that. If we gather together again sometime, I'd love to hear, especially if you've read some of the memoir, more about that for you. How that might be different, a little different than mine. How maybe women could be a little different than men. What our gift to the church might be to help people wrestle with that. Okay.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other really wonderful gifts of this book is to have a priest, who ultimately chooses celibacy as a way of life, to so beautifully honor the gift of sexuality. And, I think you model a possibility for our church in doing that so beautifully. So, just one more reason to recommend this book for those of you who have not yet read it. It's a gift to yourself. There are so many places here you'll want to go back to and